Have you been hearing people say that Nnamdi Kanu's appeal has entered a new phase and wondering what that actually means? Is there really a new legal direction that could shape what happens next? Or is it simply another step in a long court process? Today, we're taking a careful look at what is publicly known about the appeal proceedings, what lawyers on both sides are arguing, and why many Nigerians are paying close attention to the case. The discussion around Nnamdi Kanu's appeal has once again returned to the spotlight following fresh court filings and legal arguments connected to his conviction. While different groups have shared varying interpretations of these developments, the most important thing is to separate verified court processes from opinions and political commentary. That's exactly what we're going to do in this video, so you can better understand what is happening without the noise. Before we continue, if you enjoy balanced and fact-based updates on important developments across Nigeria, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss future updates. Also, share this video with others who want clear explanations instead of rumors. Most importantly, leave a comment below and tell us your thoughts as we go along. We'd love to hear your perspective. To understand the latest developments, we first need to look at where the case currently stands. Following his conviction in late 2025, Nnamdi Kanu filed an appeal asking the Court of Appeal to overturn the judgment of the Federal High Court. According to publicly available court filings, his legal team argues that the conviction should be set aside for several reasons, including questions surrounding jurisdiction, procedural issues, and the conduct of the trial. They are asking the appellate court to review the lower court's decision and determine whether errors were made during the proceedings. At the same time, reports indicate that the federal government also filed a cross-appeal relating to parts of the judgment. That development has attracted significant public discussion because each side interprets its legal significance differently. Supporters of Kanu argue that the government's filing strengthens his appeal, while government lawyers are expected to present their own interpretation before the appellate court. Ultimately, it will be for the Court of Appeal, not public opinion, to decide the legal effect of those arguments. One expression that many people have been hearing lately is jurisdiction. For many Nigerians, that sounds like complicated legal language, but the idea itself is quite straightforward. Jurisdiction simply means whether a court has the legal authority to hear a case and make binding decisions. Before any court examines evidence or reaches a verdict, it must first have the legal power to do so under the Constitution and relevant laws. If a court lacks jurisdiction, lawyers often argue that whatever happened afterward may not stand legally. On the other hand, if the court properly has jurisdiction, then the case proceeds to other issues like evidence, procedure, and the application of the law. This is why the word jurisdiction has become one of the biggest talking points in the appeal. According to reports on the appeal filings, Kanu's supporters believe certain issues raised in the government's own cross-appeal could have implications for questions of jurisdiction. They have cited previous judicial authorities to support their position. However, these remain legal arguments presented by one side of the case. The Court of Appeal has not yet delivered a final ruling accepting or rejecting those arguments. That distinction is very important. In every appeal, lawyers present arguments that favor their clients. The opposing side responds with its own arguments. The judges then examine the record, study the law, review earlier court decisions, listen to submissions from both parties, and finally reach a judgment. That is how appellate courts operate. So when people say that certain legal documents have been released, it is important to understand what they usually mean. In many cases, these are appeal notices, written briefs, cross appeals, or other court documents submitted by the parties involved. They are not necessarily judgments or final decisions. They simply outline the legal arguments each side wants the appellate court to consider before reaching its own independent conclusion. This is one reason legal experts often advise the public not to confuse court filings with court rulings. A filing tells you what someone is asking the court to do. A judgment tells you what the court has actually decided. There is a major difference between the two. Another reason this appeal has attracted so much attention is because of the wider national conversation surrounding the case. For years, opinions have remained sharply divided. Some Nigerians believe the conviction should stand based on the evidence and applicable laws. Others believe significant legal questions remain unanswered and should be fully examined during the appeal process. Because of these differing opinions, every new court filing quickly becomes a major topic across television, newspapers, radio, and social media. However, legal analysts repeatedly remind the public that social media discussions do not determine court outcomes. Only the judges hearing the appeal can do that after considering all relevant submissions. Reports also indicate that the appeal process is progressing through the normal judicial stages, including the exchange of written briefs between the parties. These briefs allow each side to explain its legal arguments before the court eventually schedules substantive hearings where necessary. Many viewers have also been asking another important question. What exactly does the Court of Appeal look at during an appeal? Contrary to what some people believe, an appeal is not always a completely fresh trial. Instead, appellate judges generally review whether the trial court correctly interpreted the law, followed proper procedures, and reached conclusions that are supported by the legal record. They study court documents, examine legal authorities cited by both parties, consider previous judgments from higher courts, and determine whether there were errors significant enough to affect the outcome. That is why legal teams spend so much time preparing detailed written arguments. Sometimes those written submissions run into hundreds of pages because every legal point must be supported with statutes, constitutional provisions, and earlier judicial decisions. For many Nigerians watching from outside the legal profession, the process may appear slow. But appellate litigation often takes time precisely because judges are expected to carefully examine every legal issue before making decisions that could have lasting consequences. One important point that legal practitioners often emphasize is that appellate courts are not influenced by public opinion, social media trends, or political debates. Their responsibility is to interpret the law based on the Constitution, statutes passed by the National Assembly, previous judicial authorities, and the specific facts contained in the official court record. That means no matter how much discussion takes place outside the courtroom, the judges are expected to focus only on the legal arguments presented before them. This is why you may hear lawyers frequently use the word jurisprudence. While it sounds technical, jurisprudence simply refers to the body of legal principles and previous court decisions that help judges interpret the law consistently. In Nigeria, courts often rely on earlier decisions of higher courts when considering similar legal questions. Lawyers from both sides usually cite these previous judgments to persuade the appellate court that the law supports their position. In simple terms, imagine two people disagree over the meaning of a particular law. Instead of starting from scratch, the judges may look at how similar questions were answered in earlier cases. If the facts are closely related, those previous decisions can guide the court's reasoning. This helps create consistency across the country's judicial system and gives citizens greater confidence that similar cases will generally receive similar treatment. Now, one of the biggest questions many Nigerians have been asking is this: can the Court of Appeal completely overturn a conviction? The answer is yes, but only if the court concludes that there were significant legal errors affecting the judgment. If the appellate judges find that the trial court misapplied the law, acted outside its jurisdiction, violated important legal procedures, or reached conclusions unsupported by the evidence, they have the authority to set aside or modify the judgment. On the other hand, If the judges determine that the trial was conducted according to the law and that no substantial legal errors occurred, they may uphold the conviction. There are also situations where an appellate court may order further proceedings or make other directions, depending on the specific legal issues before it. That is why appeals can end in several different ways, and predicting the outcome before judgment would simply be speculation. This is exactly why experienced legal analysts are often careful with their language. Rather than declaring that one side has already won, they usually explain that each filing represents an argument, not a final decision. The real turning point comes only when the appellate court delivers its judgment after considering all submissions. Another issue generating public discussion is the timeline of the appeal. Court processes, especially in high-profile matters, often involve several procedural stages before a final decision is delivered. Documents must be filed, exchanged, and reviewed. Both parties may respond to each other's arguments, and the court must ensure that every procedural requirement has been met before hearing the substantive issues. To some observers, this may appear slow, but many legal experts argue that taking sufficient time is an important part of ensuring fairness. Rushed proceedings can create additional legal complications, while careful consideration helps strengthen public confidence in the judicial process.